be a politician. Drinking water. Welcome to Workspace's Beer and Business. My name is Stacey Zackin. I am the manager of Workspace, and we're owned and operated by the town of Manchester. We have 48 professionals sharing the building who call this their home base for their business. One of them is Tim Becker of Creative Images Photography. We have insurance agents, graphic designers, video game, web designers, a lot of different companies share this space. And then we have some members who only use the space to host meetings and events. Sponsoring members include ECHN, Highland Park, Fuss & O'Neill, as well as MAC Charities with their MAC Chefs program, which is co-sponsored by the Bistro, which is one of our neighbors. Another one of our neighbors is Angry Egg. We've got Steve and Liz Hall. They're a couple blocks south of here. And then we still consider you a neighbor, in neighboring towns, M&R Liquor. So we come together to create these synergies of bringing people together to learn about business, to socialize. Professional development is based in personal development, and networking is based on personal relationships. So we're going to learn a little bit about them and their business. First of all, I want to thank you for being here, for sharing your food, sharing your alcohol, sharing your beautiful images. I've got a little frog in my throat.
You need some cab.
I know, right? So that's good. I'll do as little talking as possible. I wasn't prepared like Trevor Noah, who got some interpreters for him when he lost his voice on The Daily Show. If anybody saw that, it's amusing. But let's start with Tim Becker. If you could explain to people what co-working is and what brought you to Workspace.
Well, the main attraction I saw was to kind of shrink the footprint of what I had and the overhead I had in my business. I had a 800 square foot studio for almost 40 years, and I realized that probably more than 95% of the time I was at my desk editing images or speaking to clients or returning emails, and maybe I would use my studio 5% of the time or less, and the majority of my work is on location, where I'm bringing my equipment out and the lighting and setting up shots at other people's businesses. So when they had the open house, that did it for me. And I was a little anxious, but very pleased. And I've also met some fabulous co-workers here that are from all different type of businesses. So it's not like working alone, even though you have your own space. You get to see a lot of other people every single day.
We call it working alone, but together. And Tim, because he was downsizing, had a lot of rolls of paper and fabric backdrops that he uses for photo shoots. So he's donated that to Workspace. So we're gonna, in one of all of the spaces here, we've got 6 meeting venues. The gallery where we're sitting right now is one of them. Our multi-purpose spaces. So we're gonna take one of the conference rooms, put hangers up so that we can place the rolls, so when photographers come to rent a space for a photo shoot, they don't have to bring their frames, they don't have to bring their rolls. Maybe eventually we'll invest in lights. But we want to make it as easy for people to be as successful in their business as possible. Speaking of success, M&R Liquors is very well known around Manchester and the other towns. Can you tell us a little bit about the history of M&R Liquors and maybe what you're known for?
Sure, my name is Brendan Luman, and I'm the manager at our South Windsor location on 206 Buckland Road in South Windsor. M&R is actually a family-owned, operated company. We started in 1952 with our first store in Glastonbury, and really from that point, we had as many as 14 stores within the Hartford area. M&R is actually named after Marion and Roy Rounsville, the two founders of the stores. At this time, Gary and Neil Rounsville actually run the day-to-day operation, so it's still within the family's holdings. We're actually entering into our 3rd generation with Ian Rounsville, Gary's son. So it's an exciting time for us. Our store locations, we have 6. We actually are grandfathered in at 6, so most stores in the liquor industry are only allowed 4. So we are in our Glastonbury, Manchester, South Windsor, Southington, Avon, and Farmington locations. And really, for us, in terms of the business aspect, we're proud to say that we have managers that have been with us now, some of them for over 30 years. So there's something to be said for no turnover, very little turnover in our management system. So when you come to an M&R, you're most likely going to see a familiar face. And as far as our staff is concerned, again, very little turnover on that aspect. We really attribute that to the way Gary and Neil have run this company for the now over 40 years that they've been associated with it. Again, with us, it's more so we are a company that deals with liquor, wine, and other spirits. But what sets us apart, I think, is the education. So our education aspect is, for us, feet on the ground in the areas that you are doing business. So winemakers, wineries, distilleries. We actually have a group of our managers, myself included, we're going to Mexico to learn about tequila. That's right, learn. So it is a learning experience, and we bring that education back to you as the consumers, as our guests. We also run tastings. We're actually doing more tastings upstairs in our tasting room in South Windsor. So again, it's getting into more of the educational and having the public kind of interact with our company. So I think that's, so really in terms of our history, when you look at it, it's a long history, but it's an effective one at that.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And your tastings, are they very formal affairs, or can groups of people and friends come? Is it a fun night out?
Yeah, so actually our last tasting was this past Tuesday. What's today? Today's Thursday, so Tuesday. We had a Scotch tasting, 30 people. We had Bistro and Main cater it. So we have our, in terms of the admission into these tastings, a lot of it's charitable donation afterwards. So giving back to some of these communities. We're actually having a toy drive next Tuesday from 6 to 8. It's a $10 unwrapped gift for beer tasting, craft beer tasting in our upstairs tasting room. So it's basically a room's almost double this for our tastings. But yes, they're informal, but they can certainly be formal with sit-down dinners and so on and so forth. So we're progressing to that.
Excellent. Well, let us know when they're coming up, and we will share them with our network as well. Now, Angry Egg is a new entity onto Main Street, so if you'll introduce yourself and how you came up with the idea to have a restaurant on Main Street and the name, and what it's been like to be here in Manchester.
So we opened March of this year, so about 8 months, and so far so good. I've been in the restaurant business for about 15 years. I worked at Cabby's, and I recently worked at Carbone's for about 5 years as chef, and I helped open the one in Bloomfield, Carbone's Kitchen. And me and my wife Liz always had the dream of opening our own restaurant, and we saw that Sunnyside went for sale, and we decided to take the plunge and open up our own restaurant.
What was the turnaround time from seeing a location that you wanted to actually opening?
Not too bad. We looked at it in November of last year, and we took it over I think February, so it took about 2 months from actually getting in there, like signing the lease, and then actually opening it about 2 months. So it wasn't too bad. It had to be renovated. It had to be things brought up to code. The town was very helpful. The health inspectors were very helpful with this. So the process was pretty good. I will let Liz tell us how the name came about.
Well, so previous to owning the restaurant, I would cook breakfast for the family on Saturday or Sunday, depending on sports events, etc. And I was frying an egg one morning, and it got really angry at me. It literally, and I'm not kidding you, it literally was jumping out of the pan. It was spitting, and I was like, wow, this is a really angry egg. And so we would call the kitchen the Angry Egg.
That was probably about 4 years ago.
Well, we've been in the house for 6 years, so yeah. Something like that, yes. So that was the name of the kitchen, and that was just naturally going to be the name of the restaurant. So.
What have you learned since opening?
I really love my husband.
I was going to say about each other.
Well, just like, we did meet at Cabby's. That's how we met.
Okay.
So we have worked together before.
We learned that the front of the house is harder than the back. It's an ongoing debate in the restaurant business. Whose job is harder, the kitchen or the front? It's the front, okay.
Yeah, I'd say it's the kitchen. I think they both equally have their challenges.
That's why there's wine.
There you go.
That is why. I agree.
Well, as a town employee, I want to thank you for the kudos to my colleagues. I too, because this building is such a collaborative effort between the facilities and building maintenance people and the IT department and the planning and economic development department and even family leisure and recreation department in terms of building community and designing the look. Manchester Community College, this was known as MCC on Main, and currently this is their art exhibit here. It's just been phenomenal that all of these entities can work together. You're a member of the Manchester Chamber of Commerce, as is Tim. I should have done my research. I'm not sure if you guys are, but excellent. How important is community when you have a family-run business?
We wouldn't be able to do what we do without the community. And I have to say that the downtown district is phenomenal. All of the restaurants that are our friends on the street are amazing. If you run out of something, you just run up the street real fast and they'll give it to you. We wouldn't be able to do it without.
Yeah, it's like a community. You know, it's like a community. Everyone on Main Street, and even all our customers. You know, we developed our own little family within like 8 months. We have people that come in all the time. You know, we have people that come in like every day. You know, it's awesome. You know, it's like second home. It's just, you know, our home obviously, but you know, it's a second home for our customers too, and that's what we want. You know.
And Brandon, you must have a lot of relationships with people that you've been their vendor for years and years, and especially in a changing market where you can, I'm assuming when they opened up, however many decades ago, you couldn't get the alcohol you can get now at all the craft places and the grocery stores. So how do you maintain those relationships?
Well, since you talk about the ever-changing, basically the ever-changing landscape, but it's in terms of the community, we got managers that have been here, again, as I said before, over 30 years. So their kids are now coming into M&R. And you have these conversations about, oh, when your parents used to come here, and they're like, what? But what's really fascinating about this industry is as much as it's changing, there's very things do stay the same in terms of the what quality people you have coming through, but they want to support local. They like the aspect that it's a locally owned. It's whether it's farm to table or bottle to glass type of mentality. And in our case, with Gary and Neil, and then going into our third generation, we've now gone into the online sales. So we're reinventing our thinking, reinventing our ways, and we're connecting with people outside of Connecticut a lot. But this aspect of owning a restaurant, it's not so much that you're really depending on the people that live in the town and so on and so forth, but making yourselves marketable. For us, that's the challenge. How do you make yourselves marketable in a market where we have multi-billion-dollar companies that are running the alcohol exchange? And as far as the other beer stuff goes, I mean, what's perfect for this area is these locally owned breweries. Mm-hmm. It's done wonders for the industry. It does put a dent in some sales, but again, it's creating revenue for others, and the idea of talking about these things. It's an exciting industry, but it's you have to work hard, and that's it.
And we've had some great local breweries here for the Beer and Business event. We had Second Bridge, Labyrinth, Parable, and Athletic Brewing, which is actually non-alcoholic. I don't know if you sell non-alcoholic beer, but I can connect you. And then we're coming up, in February, we're gonna have what's the name of it? Urban Lodge, which is around the corner. And Connecticut Valley Brewing will be here in January. So this event happens the first Thursday. And again, in terms of community, feel free to tell people, hey, let's meet at Workspace for happy hour. You can even tell them you're hosting it. It's, free, fabulous food and beer. It's just a little sample, and you can go to one of the fabulous Main Street restaurants for dinner, not the Angry Egg, because they're only breakfast and lunch. We talked a little bit about the disruption of the market. Tim, you've been a photographer for a long time. Many years before people had cameras on their phones and thought that they could take a professional quality photo. So how do you overcome that challenge?
My biggest competitor is somebody who happens to have an iPhone. The quality is fabulous. So that's kind of led me to kind of more specialize the areas that you really can't do well with an iPhone. I was contacted by Google a number of years ago. They were starting a program to basically show off businesses in 360 degrees. They kind of brought their street view inside of businesses, and I was kind of recruited to start that program in this area, and I've visited many businesses and done the what they call virtual tours. You can't do that very well with an iPhone. I guess you can do it, but professional lighting, it's not the same. So if you want a professional image that you're going to have on your website or your Facebook page or your LinkedIn, you don't want it to look like you did a selfie. So I was lucky to connect with a pretty large medical group. I do a lot of portraits of healthcare providers. And the other area that I've kind of bet a niche in, I'm fascinating with anything to do with manufacturing, factories, anything that cuts metal, welds metal, any kind of manufacturing facility. Again, I don't think it's done very well with a iPhone. I bring my own lighting and I try to get dramatic shots of the manufacturing process. So I've kind of specialized in those areas that I've kind of gotten away from event coverage. I do a few events, but generally that's done very well. That's something you can do very well with the phone in your camera phone. But those other areas, I love being in all kinds of businesses, and that's how I've kind of stayed competitive. I'm just focusing on getting good visual communication for businesses to show themselves.
Excellent, thank you. Do we have any questions for any of our guests tonight? Because I can keep talking, so we're going to wrap it up now that my voice is better. Anybody curious? Yes.
You said you've been a photographer for 40 years?
Yes.
Do you use film still, or?
So the question is, do you use film?
I have to confess, I gave up my film camera in the year 2000, and I kind of, for a couple of years, I kind of shot both, because the professional level digital camera at that time was 4 megapixels, which got a very nice portrait I did, and I don't think you could pick it out, but the technology was, not the greatest when it first came out, but after a few years, they went to 6 megapixels and 12, and now they're 24 and 36. So a couple of years I shot both, so I was really confident that I could produce a good quality for my customers. And my Nikon app sits in my bureau at home.
I went to film school at a time where we spliced film with a razor blade and put it together with Scotch tape as part of our editing process.
A-roll and B-roll.
Yeah, yeah. Any other questions? Yeah.
What camera are you using now?
What camera are you using now, Tim? Giving away your trade secrets.
I have 2 Nikon D300s, which I do most of my still shots with, and I have a Nikon 5100 that I use for HD video. And I don't know, I don't want to give them up. I mean, they're kind of better, fancier ones out now, but it's like, these are like solid like my Nikon F was, and you know, I'm not ready to upgrade quite yet.
Do you ever succumb to taking a photograph with your phone?
That's a good question.
Yes, I do. It's kind of like asking a writer, you know, what kind of pencil writes a better story, you know? It really doesn't matter what tool you're using if you know, composition, lighting, and, but yeah, I've used my phone occasionally.
So we're gonna, yes.
So for each one of you, everyone always usually talks about, and I'm Stephen King, I work with other designs, so we work with all things print. So business cards, flyers, brochures, banners, all those types of things. However, my interest is always in what have you learned in regards to, for most business owners, that you would say, man, if I had to do that over again, I'm sure their Yahoo wish they would have bought Google. Going back in time.
So our last question of the evening is, what, as you as a business owner, have you learned that you would pass on to other business owners? And you're a business manager, so tell us what you've learned.
To be Robert Mondavi, that would probably be it. No, I mean, we were talking earlier, Stephen and I were talking earlier, but I think the one thing to talk in my side of the industry anyway is always reinventing yourself, never sitting and staying as it may be comfortable. You know, you may be making this much money, you may be having this much business, but there's always the downside. There's always the downturn. And so who's the next one, and when is it going to come? When you have bigger companies that always have, there's always the bigger fish in the pond type of mentality. Is, so how do you go beyond that? Looking ahead to, now we're in the millennial aspect. Looking ahead to when their kids are old enough. What's going to be that trend? And you see it happening in our industry all the time. There's wine labels that talk to you. There's, you have a QR code, you scan the bottle, the winemaker tells you about the wine. Does it make us irrelevant? No, because having a bottle of wine or some beer or whatever it might be, you need that. It's I say necessity item. It is a necessity item. But you can have it right now. You need to have it now, and you need somebody to talk to you about it. So for us, for me anyway, it's education, but also, not thinking the worst, but just not becoming complacent, really, in this industry anyway.
Excellent. That's your soundbite when you clip this out for your own social media. We had a high tea lunch and learn on Friday that Tim actually attended, and it was about disrupting your business and the term disruption, and how do you keep your satisfied customers and sustain them and yet innovate, because people generally don't like change, but he's right, you always do have to keep evolving, and it's a challenge. What is your words of wisdom for any business owners?
It's all me. I really love you. We have a very small restaurant. It's 40 seats. I think what's very important is for our guests, our family that come in. I don't consider them customers. If you come into my restaurant, you're either a guest the first time. If you come back, now you're family. So I try to convey that. Stephen, all of our staff tries to convey that. We're not trying to compete with the other restaurants on the street. We all have our own niche. We're just trying to enhance the street. When you come into our restaurant, I want you to forget what's out there. I want you to come in, enjoy the experience, meet a new friend, meet us, and then go out. and have your day. I want you to feel like home when you come to my restaurant.
What are your hours?
7 to 2.
7 to 2.
Presently, we're open on Mondays, so we're open 7 days a week right now through the holidays, and then that's something that we'll consider after the holidays, whether or not we're going to be open. But my husband wants them.
And you're only as good as your last meal you served. So it's in the restaurant business, like your business too, it's very difficult. I mean, a lot of restaurants fail, and it's an ever-changing market as well. I mean, we're not trying to be anyone else. We're trying to do our own thing, and like my wife said, just try to just make everyone feel special and customer service, put out great food, and just make people happy, and that's it. That's why we got into it. I mean, that's why I've been cooking, and that's why we wanted to open our own restaurant, make people happy, and that's what we do. It's not an easy business. It's not for everyone, and but you gotta love it, and we do. So that's what we want. We want people to walk out the door and feel special, and like you said, have a good rest of their day, and just be, that's it.
I just wanted to just piggyback on that, and especially in the restaurant industry, you see, even unfortunately locally here, there's a couple of restaurants that just went out of business, and it's like, you try to figure out why, but how do you defeat that aspect, and that is, it's customer service. But for me, our staff, you train your staff so that they could leave you at some point to go work somewhere else, and they're educated by you. But treat them better so that they don't want to leave. And they're there, and that's where the turnover happens, or the turnover doesn't happen. And that's why coming into a restaurant, as I do, that's my favorite time of day for food is breakfast. I figure out where I'm going to go. And it's being able to go into some place, have that smile, talk to somebody, have an interaction, because you're human. You're all human at the end of the day. Make yourself human. Walking through a door, buying a bottle of wine, it can be very robotic at times. Yeah, it's over there. Yeah, that's what you want. And pointing, where it is. We're going to walk you to where you need to be. We're going to explain to you what you're going to experience with the bottle of wine. As your staff would probably explain to you what you're going to have, or if they ask what the special of the day is, take the time. And it's really important.
And on that note, I think we're going to wrap up because we've hit time, but I think what we've learned is customer service is the most important, and I have to say good bacon is right up there because you have really good bacon. So, absolutely. So we're going to let Tim close it out, but thank you for being here for Workspace. We too pride ourselves on customer service. We try to be very responsive and accommodating and flexible and learn about people, and not everybody likes to do the same things. So you have to figure out what it is are people's needs, and there's the golden rule, which is treat people as you wish to be treated. We like to follow the platinum rule, which is treat people how they want to be treated. So Tim has been a great coworker and supporter of Workspace, so we're going to give him the last word.
Thank you. Just on the thought of what I've learned is I always try to give the customer just a little bit more than they expect. And an example of that is, yesterday I shot some videos at an event. I don't try to do events, but this one I do every year. And that was yesterday afternoon. By 9 in the morning, the link to those videos was sent out to the client, and they responded, thanks for the fast turnaround. I try not to do events, but I've done some for years and years, and I have a major event I do for a real estate company. And one year I contacted them saying, hey, when's the awards event? Oh, we've hired someone else. It's like, okay. Well, sure enough, the next year,
They came back?
They wanted Tim again. Gee, the price went up a little bit.
Yeah.
We can edit that one out.
But in any case, and the other thing is consistent quality. I try to give the best quality every single assignment, and I'm sure you in the restaurant business and in your business, having consistent quality. If you go in and even one day and your meal isn't what you expected, they may not be back. So I'm sure, whatever business you're in, consistent quality and customer service.
And I think the values that you all exhibit and talk about are why you're here, speaking to us, taking the time out of your evening. You guys don't work in the evenings. You do. You probably have other things to do. Tim spent all day here. So we really appreciate you being here. And everything you said reminded me of something I was told once, and I wish I knew who said it or who it was credited. But they said if you treat someone normal, they'll feel less than. If you treat someone special, they'll feel normal. So imagine how special you have to treat someone to have them feel special. So these events always make me feel special when people come out to the community. So thank you very much. If you could spread the word about these businesses. Workspace has a Facebook page. That's where you'll find this video. We'll have the links to everybody's businesses, and we'll be back January 3rd for our next Beer and Business. Invite your network. Tell them to meet you here. It won't cost you anything. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.